y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board. To learn more about the benefits and resources provided by the VLB, check out vlb.texas.gov. Today, my guest is Wes Gray. He is the CEO of Alpha Architects and joins us by the way of Pennsylvania, PA. And it's good to have you on the show today, Wes. Before we get into a myriad of different topics about veteran transition, your life in the finance industry and what you've learned as CEO in terms of leadership and continued service to your business and your community, can you tell us a little bit about your military background?
Sure. So I had a weird entry in the service. I was in a PhD program that I entered in 2002, made that to 2004. And I said, I'm going on a sabbatical. I'm going to go join the Marines. So obviously they thought I was crazy, but I left in 2004. And then I served in the Marines from 2004 to 2008. My MOS, I was a 0203, which is a ground intelligence officer. That pipeline is pretty long. It's about a year and a half, 2 years, because you got to do all the infantry stuff. And then they send you to do all the geeky intel things. So right when I got out, I got shipped initially to Okinawa. Then I went to the Philippines, and then I got attached to 2-3 out of Hawaii, deployed to Iraq, did a deployment on one of the MIT teams out there in Haditha, hung out with Iraqis for a little bit, and then came back and went back to Okinawa, and then got out on my EIS, and that was it. Went back to Chicago and finished my PhD.
It's a little bit different than the the time away, the year off that some students do, huh? To go find themselves, instead of doing that stint, that break year, you decided to join the Marine Corps and go find a war to fight in, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I had to get sign off, obviously, on a 4-year sabbatical. Because usually you get 1 year, but it turns out that the PhD director, her husband was an old Navy chief. So she was pretty amiable to, supporting people that wanted to, be in the service. And so it all worked out in the end.
How did you come to found Alpha Architect?
Well, pretty crazy story. So I graduated 2010 with PhD, and I went immediately on the professor job market. Around that same time, I actually got cold called by a billionaire out of New York City who literally said, hey, we're rolling off of 2008. We're firing all our hedge fund managers. I read your blog. I've read your dissertation. Can we talk? And I was like, well, yeah, sure. We can talk. You don't get to talk to billionaires that often. And he was interested in my work. And, one thing led the other. I started as a professor, but then I also behind the scenes was basically starting to consult for this family office.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2012, they seeded our business. They gave us 20 million to start, then 50 mil. And I was still being a professor, obviously. And then probably 2014, we ended up taking $1 million operating capital investment from actually another person who's in the service as well. And at that point, I was like, okay, now I've got real money. I've got someone else's capital. I need to kind of, make a move here. And so I resigned as a professor and went on to just do Alpha Architect full time. How
long had you been teaching for?
I ended up doing that for 5 years. So I did 4 years. And then because it's real hard to recruit for professors, especially what I was doing, empirical asset pricing, well, I gave my boss like a year. So I said, hey, I'm out of here. And he's like, well, can you stay for another year? So 2014, I basically said, hey, I need to resign because I'm going to go do this business now. And then I hung around for another year, just to finish off my term so they could recruit for the position. And then I left in 2015 to just be full-time Alpha Architect, basically. So essentially 5 years in total.
Okay. So one thing I want to talk about in that 5-year period of time, you were really interested in the concept of bridging the research gap between academia and the finance industry. Can you maybe break down what you are writing, what you are studying, and what kind of built your career into actually running Alpha Architect?
Sure. So one of the beauties of academics is they get a lot of money and funding to just sit around and do research all day long, right? So that's what I used to do when I was a professor. Like you get paid a lot of money to just think about stuff, and you write these analyses and all this stuff you've been thinking about really hard in these geeky, esoteric academic finance journals that no one reads besides finance professors. And I was just always fascinated with all the kind of free work and labor and education that people provided in there. And so it just made sense to me that, there's obviously a lot of people in our industry that try to take academic research and turn it into like something that's practical and useful. But I just thought it really hadn't gone to the level that one could take it. And so that's kind of what we've done is we just really try to, focus on academic research, being evidence-based decision makers, and translating that into the investment world, essentially.
How much of a culture shock was going from the University of Chicago, studying finance, and then joining the Marine Corps? Or was that transition for you fairly seamless?
I've always been kind of wacky in the sense that like I'd always done team sports. I was like Division I athlete, everything. So I was always used to just hazing myself a lot.
Yeah.
And the University of Chicago in particular, especially at that time when I was there, it's a very, how you say it, like libertarian culture where it's like, hey, you either make it happen and you get it done or you get booted out. It's not like a very coddling nature. They've changed a little bit. So the culture of the University of Chicago is like put up or shut up kind of mentality.
That's not a bad way to go, but it's sink or swim, right?
Yeah, it's very sink or swim. Like you got to have thick skin. Like we don't care about, whining and all these things. So for me, it honestly, it kind of had a Marine Corps culture in academic research sense. So obviously the job, instead of like doing research, you're out like, trying to kill bad guys or what have you. So the mission is very different, but honestly, like the culture and mentality, I thought was not that far of a bridge to gap, to be frank.
Any correlation between your maybe your interest and your propensity for analytics, crunching numbers, writing research reports, and then taking that skill set and then putting it into basically writing intelligence briefs or studying a population, maybe studying what the threat level was during your department?
Not really. So like, even though I was obviously trained as an intelligence officer, I basically never did that job. I was always essentially doing like infantry stuff, right? Because, on the embedded teams, you like go live at the Iraqi battalion. I'm go hanging out on foot patrols all day. I think we did like 260 convoys and we were every day like out hanging out with Iraqis chasing people. So it wasn't exactly a high-speed load drag James Bond, CIA analysis type job.
You were really running around in BMWs and
exactly. I
was a suit and tie drinking martinis.
Yeah, none of that. It was just walking around the palm groves trying to not get shot. And so I never really used any of those kind of skills in the Marine Corps, but the key things I did use are just being disciplined, staying focused under duress, like all these sort of just kind of being hard type skills that actually, frankly, you do learn a lot in a PhD program, because I always say it's 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. It's that kind of just having that mentality is translate directly into Marine Corps, even though the skill sets are literally 180 different. So no cross-pollination, long story short.
No, that's interesting, because when I was in the service too, I felt like there was, I guess this was more so about me, not necessarily, anybody else around me, but I started to feel like maybe I was like in an intellectual desert. Like I didn't feel I was feeding my body. I was working out. I was doing very physically active things, but there was this other side of who I was as a person that I
Mhm.
wanted to do more intellectually pursuit of knowledge or things
Yeah.
outside of the military sphere, especially when you're in Iraq and Afghanistan and your focus
Yeah.
is very nuanced as it should be.
Yeah.
But I still felt like there was another side of my being that I wanted to exercise, this muscle that I had that I thought could be very beneficial to myself, my career, and my community. Did you
Mhm.
feel that way when you were deployed about like, man, I'm ready to get back into studying economics. I'm ready to get back into reading, writing. I'm interested in what's going on in the markets. Did you have that sort of a sense or were
Yeah,
you
so
okay?
yeah, but my situation is unfortunately super weird, right? Because I was already on track to do exactly what I wanted. I was in a PhD finance program, and then I took a break from that because for me, I was like, hey, I have intellectualed myself out and I've only got so much time in my life where I could go like do something like the service. So for me, it was like a very well defined, like, listen, I'm taking a break actually from the intellectual side, gonna go ground and pound, be a knuckle
Fighter.
dragger for 4
Yeah.
years. And I'm just doing that as an experience because I thought it was like important life thing to do. And then when I came back, I was already falling back in on the intellectual pursuit, which most people kind of join the service because they don't really know what they want to do yet. Like, this is a good idea, let's do this, we'll figure it out later. Where I already knew what I wanted to do, then left to take a break to the service, and then came back to do what I already knew I wanted to do. So I'm not really a great example of how it works for most people. It was kind of a
Did
what
you
do they
have
call
anyone
it?
tell you? Did you have anyone push back and tell you not to join? I mean, if you're that close, you're
Oh
not.
yeah, yeah. Everyone told me not to join. Yeah, I don't think they're. Besides my uncle, who's an old Navy chief, who's like, "Oh hell yeah, that's
Yeah, go
awesome."
do it.
Yeah, there. That was a. Everyone thought I was, crazy. Obviously, so no, not many people thought it was a great idea given my stance in life. But whatever. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So
So I want to bring things up to the current day, specifically the last 6 to 12 months, and what we've seen kind of a change in the markets. And really, what I want to focus on is the rush of retail investors that we've seen into platforms like Robinhood. I think what really caught maybe the millennial generation, the post 9/11 generations when it comes to being aware of financial markets, was actually the move in Bitcoin about a year ago, right? There was
yeah,
this huge rush into it. It goes, straight through the roof. And all of a sudden, I think a lot of people my age in their 20s and 30s at the time go, hey, maybe this is something that I should be paying
yeah.
attention to, excuse me. So as that has matured, there's been, like I said, a rush of retail investors who have entered the market for the first time, who are getting
Yeah.
their feet wet. Maybe they're doing really well. Maybe they're getting burned from time to time. Can you
Hmm.
tell us from your perspective as somebody who does this for a career, somebody who has a long-term focus, manages money, and has studied this, what's kind
Hmm.
of your take on what's happening right now with this surge of retail investors?
Well, human nature never changes. And I had, I guess, the luxury, or maybe the not luxury, of living through the internet bubble in the late 90s.
Mm,
And so it seems a lot like deja vu right now, right? Where it's like, wow, tech is everything. Valuations don't matter because these people have monopolies. It's so exciting. And, old stodgy companies are going bankrupt. So why would you care that they made a lot of money? Like, let's go buy these other companies that just lose money and light it on fire all day, right? So this just happens. And, markets are part rational, part sentiment driven. Clearly, we're in a cycle right now where sentiment is driving a lot of the demand out there and pushing a lot of the stock prices in one way or the other. A lot of people say, like, well, you got to get out of it, you got to get out of the way. But the one thing about sentiment is it's hard to time, and this could go for another 10, 20 years. But in the end, gravity matters. And in financial markets, gravity is your ability to generate free cash flow over time, because that's what stock prices are supposed to represent, like what you could pull out of this business over the life of that enterprise. And, so I don't know what all the Robinhood traders are doing, young people. It's like, oh, it's so easy. You just buy these stocks, they go up 100%. And honestly, it's actually the worst lesson you could possibly learn. And I had the same problem when in 98, I bought a stock, Swisher Sweet, the old cigars. And literally a month later it doubled. And I thought I was like Warren Buffett. I was like, oh, this is so damn easy. And then I had some good luck, good runs for 2 or 3 years. And then I basically got my face ripped off. Wow. And I finally had my humble pie moment. But thank God that was at a time when I didn't have a lot of capital, because I lived through this episode of basically you do something, you think you're smart, and then you get overconfident, and then you keep doing these things without realizing reality is it was 100% luck. And so I am pretty worried that people think that it's so easy, like, just buy stocks, Yeah, I think people are going to end up like they always do, learn the wrong lessons. Things get too crazy. They all get blown up and burn out. And then they'll be like old guys with scars on their back like me, that tell people, hey, it's not that easy. It's a lot harder than it looks. And, money doesn't grow on trees, but no one likes to listen to people.
I kind of wonder too. I have that fear as well. And part of me, the optimistic side of me, hopes that some of these people will stay in the markets, or will learn about it, or can build businesses, or that something, healthy can come from it. Do you think there's a possibility of that maybe it creates?
Oh yeah. I think
want to come work for you?
Anything that encourages people to get in the market, even if you get, slayed in the end, it's actually great. Like for me, it was like, I learned a lot of humble pie lessons. I got an opportunity to understand how this works. And it's really important that young people understand investing, because you're blessed with the number one thing that old people don't have: time. And, you can go Google about compound math, but if you make 7-8% a year for 20, 30 years, you don't need to invest a lot of money to become a millionaire. But you need 20 to 30 years to stick with it. So it's good that people are attracted to the marketplace just to get their feet wet, even if they get smoked out a little bit. I think it'll still be on net. It's a good thing to get people involved.
So I want to go back to your roots. You actually, as a young boy growing up in Colorado, spent some time working on a ranch, spent some time working on a farm. What were the lessons that you learned from that helped drive you to where you are today?
Well, yeah. So I grew up on this ranch called Adams Rib Ranch, which is near Eagle, Colorado. Now it's all a big development, but back in the day, it was a 65,000 acre ranch that my dad, he was the manager. And I was the manual labor helper. So the biggest lesson learned
to pick up the rocks when he told you to pick up the rocks.
Yeah, pretty much. I would go out with the crews and, do irrigation ditches and like flip hay bales and chase down calves and give them tags and, all these fun things. So for me, I thought it was a great experience just because it is a cool adventure, but it also, I learned that I hate doing manual labor all day long, and that it's not fun. So, we were not rich, obviously, because my dad was, a cattle rancher. And he didn't know anything about making money, but he's like, hey, all I know is if you don't want to do this job anymore, go work your brain out, man. Like otherwise you're going to be sitting there digging ditches. And so I just thought that was a good incentive, kind of like the kid that, if you touch the fire, you actually learn, hey, you probably shouldn't touch the fire anymore. Same thing here. Like, hey, I'm like hating manual labor. Well, the solution is go figure out how to get smart so you can use your brain and get paid more. So for me, it was like very pragmatic lessons of this sucks. Like, let's do something different. And just, I just enjoyed the kind of the adventure of being on a ranch. It's a lot more exciting than most people I talk to who like grow up in the suburbs. I'm like, God, that sucks.
I know. I was going to say that's so much different from my childhood, growing up in the burbs where it's basically just a concrete jungle, man. I guess there's got to be some benefits of growing up on a ranch too, huh?
Yeah. I never really knew the benefits until I was able to relate with other people. Cause when you grow up, you just, that's how you grew up. So you just think that everyone does that. But it's only after the fact that I really came to appreciate just how unique of an experience that was. Because I live in the burbs now, and I look at my kids, and I'm like that old guy that's like, God, they're
Yeah,
so
you don't know what it's like when how it was when I
yeah.
grew up. I used to, walk to the school stop in a
Yeah,
snowstorm.
I know. I feel like that. So I just try to stop myself because I don't want to be that guy. But every time in my head that's I'm like, oh, geez, what am I? I'm ruining these kids, man. They're soft. We need to go like do some hazing or something. But wife
Yeah, one
wouldn't
thing
probably
that
dig that.
my dad taught me too. He goes, sometimes the things that drive you to do what you want to do are finding out the things that you don't want to do. And I
Yeah,
think that's actually really good advice for veterans who are getting out of the military is, finding out that you didn't want to do manual labor for the rest of your life was actually the thing that pushed you toward do what you want to do. And
yeah,
I think, for veterans who are getting out of the service, or maybe somebody who's in a different sort of transition phase of life, you got to go out and you got to try some things. And just because you don't always like the first thing that you're doing,
yeah.
doesn't mean that you screwed up or that, you should stop trying.
Yeah. Well, another thing is you might get lucky too. Like my original intentions to learn finance and investing was obviously just to make money, like straight up, right? I was blessed though because I ended up finding it actually interesting as an intellectual pursuit. So it just so happened that my interests aligned genuinely with something where actually you can get paid a lot too, which was great, right? And so some people don't have that luxury. But that's why, to your point, it's important that you try anything, even things you don't think you like, because you could be like me and actually be surprised that you end up liking something that really you went in it for a different reason than you thought, initially. So yeah, try new things.
No, absolutely. I'm gonna go. I like kind of like jumping through the timelines here with you. I want
Sure.
to go back to the phone call that we talked about earlier in the conversation,
Yeah.
where you're a university professor, you're writing a blog, you're putting out research paper, and you get this call basically out of the blue from a billionaire. Let's
Yeah.
park here for a minute. Can you tell us about that day?
Yeah, sure. I remember it very well. So I was actually down in Peralta, New Mexico, which is near Albuquerque, at my grandmother's house, and they live on like kind of like a mini farm there. And I just get this call from a 212 number, which is New York City, and this dude, Eddie Stern, it's part of like the NYU Stern family. He says, "Yeah, I've been reading your blog. I manage $4 billion for my family's office. I want to talk to you." And literally, as he's making this intro, my grandmother's like, "Wesley, the horses are out." And I literally, I was like, "Eddie," I was like, "Dude, I'm sorry, but my grandmother's horse is out. Can I call you back in a minute?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I guess." And so I hang up on the guy. And I went like, I think someone left the damn gate open on one of the pens. So I went out there, got the horse. So they have like a few thoroughbreds or whatever. Got the horse in there, came back, called back up Eddie. It just so turns out they're super wealthy, but they're like normal people, right?
Yeah.
They put their pants on every day like you or I do. So he was pretty cool about it. He's like, "Wow, that was pretty unique intro." And so that's kind of how it went down. And then again, he was like very pragmatic, business guy basically. So we hit it off, pretty quickly. And then I ended up just meeting up there at New York City, and things went from there essentially. So
Anytime when you hung up that phone, did you think I shouldn't have done that? You got to
kind of, but
running down that horse, or
yeah.
you're like, oh shit, I need to get back on the phone here.
Yeah, the problem with being in the Marines and I used to have to brief generals and everything. I just got over like worrying about status.
Mm.
It just didn't matter to me. So like I just don't care. Like, oh, you're a general, you're a billionaire, like you're some president. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, who are you? Like, everyone's a person. And so that kind of stuff doesn't really affect me. I'm like, whatever. He's a billionaire. Like, who
Right.
cares? He's got more money than me, but he's just a person. And I've always just dealt with people that were just very like normal. And it just so happened I got blessed with meeting someone who had that level of wealth that was just like you or I, like he's type of guy that could be in the Marines and I ought to take him in the fighting hole with me. He's, he's just a normal person. He's not like a stereotype that people would think.
Well, let me ask you about that though. I mean, that kind of view of, being able to manage personalities and having the confidence to talk to different people, regardless of what their stature is, probably
Yeah.
comes in handy when after that you're starting to add employees and trying to build a team around you so that you
Yeah.
can make this firm successful. What was your approach to hiring?
So it started off when I was a professor. I would just basically recruit from my classroom. And so initially Jack, who's another PhD guy on our team, one of my business partners, he was actually assigned to me as my research assistant as a professor. So that was very convenient. That we have to be aligned on a lot of things, and we started off, as he was like doing academic research with me. And then there was a few other folks we met. Like I used to teach the MS finance program, all the quant geeks basically. So it was great because I could, people in a classroom setting don't think they're getting recruited. They just think they're being a student. And, our firm mission is empower through education. And we're very much into like, I don't care how flashy you are. I care about like what you know and what you do. And so it was an excellent recruiting opportunity for me because I could kind of see how someone actually acts in a real environment for a year. It was great. So that's how we kind of started. And then as we professionalized, I did like what everyone does. I kind of networked and end up basically recruiting like the type of people I know. So like kind of our first big recruit was who is currently now our operations officer, Pat Cleary, who's also a Marine Corps captain. And then Dave Babalak, who he's a like a passive investor in our business. He's like a former Army cat, right? And he gave us a lot of strategic guidance earlier. So I just knew military people. I knew they're like super disciplined, got stuff done, and I don't have to like handhold or babysit anyone. Because I never wanted, after being in the Marine Corps, I never wanted to run like a bureaucratic, like heavy deal. I want to run like an ODA team, right? Like I want like 10 ninjas where everyone's kind of their own boss, light guidance on, this is mission, this is intent, but everyone runs their own program, right? And I just always like small, super qualified, go-getter teams. I just have no desire to, write, fit reps and deal with 18-year-old maniacs.
Is, yeah, no, it's an interesting approach though. Is that how you, now that you're a little removed from, if I can call it the startup phase, if I can, if you have some of the time in grade essentially of running the firm and managing money and bringing people on, has your approach or skill set changed in leading and managing the firm?
No, I think it's pretty similar approach. Like when we don't really need to recruit a lot because our whole effort is how do you do more with less, going back to kind of like Marine Corps mentality. And so our recruiting cycle, like whenever we need to get someone in general, it's leaning back on relationships and people I've been networking into for years. Right. And I've always have people on the radar because it's so hard to recruit, for our culture. And I'm looking for like top flight, like tier 1 types would be the equivalent, like in the service.
Yeah.
And the other thing, another good story would so we run this thing called March for the Fallen, which is basically a 28-mile ruck march where I get a bunch of finance geeks, marching for the fallen. Awesome. And as you can imagine, like anyone who flies to come in and like haze themselves on a 28-mile ruck march for fun, you're going to be a little bit unique. And different. And so I kind of like that. I see that as like almost like your capstone, right? Like, okay, everyone's going to be smart. Everyone's going to know all the, the finance crap. But in the end, I need people that we can trust, have high integrity. And I just like people that are tough mentally. And so that's a great way to like, if someone's like whining and being a baby out there, well, scratch them off the list. So I'm just kind of old school, man. Like I just like hardcore, like people that can operate, sanely under duress, because that's life. So you got to have hard skills, but in the end, I like service members because obviously, for the most part, they're pretty good at that. So I've kind of replicated hazing.
I like that. You just brought that with you, huh? That was your skill set that you brought back. You're like, you know what? I'm going to be able to add this to the professional hiring experience.
Yeah, we'll do it in a nice HR legal friendly way because I can't replicate the Marine Corps here like boot camp or something. Yeah. But we can do things that are kind of in line with that the lawyers don't get pissed about.
Tell us about March for the Fallen. How did this kind of come about, and who's a part of it?
So it was started by a gentleman, Major General Gronsky. I think what was that, probably 8-9 years ago. And I got snookered into that deal because he's an old Army cat, and we were at a veterans charity event, probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And he's just this old guy, he knew it was Pat and I were both Marines. He's the guy I told you, my business partner. And he was talking a lot of trash about Marines, and he's an old infantry guy. And I didn't know he was a general. I didn't even know who this old guy was. He's just some old bald guy. And he starts telling us, he's like, oh yeah, I got this like 28-mile ruck march. You Marines probably can't do it. Like just going right to my ego. And I like I told you, I'm kind of like into PT and like doing crazy like athletic endurance things. And so obviously I couldn't resist, and he got me like hook, line, and sinker. And I learned about this event, and then I found out he's like this general, like an Army general that runs the entire National Guard. And so I got snookered in that first year. I rallied up like, there's probably 10 of us. That was probably 5-6 years ago. And then ever since then, I was like, hey, this is an awesome event. This is something that, my community is the financial services community. I'm going to get them out there. So that it's, went from like 10 to now we usually get like, well, this year we did it virtually. We probably had like 250, 300 people around the nation doing it. But usually in the land event there, it's in the middle of nowhere in PA. It's usually like 700-800 folks, but our little group is usually around 150 of just, a bunch of finance geeks that come out there and, march 28 miles with a ruck on to, honor obviously sacrifice of Gold Star families and everything. So
that's really incredible. I'm interested too, during your time at the University of Chicago, you had the opportunity to study under a Nobel Prize winner, Eugene Fama. Who is Eugene Fama? What did you learn from him?
So he is a very famous professor, obviously, who won the Nobel Prize in economics for essentially the efficient market hypothesis, which is pretty simply suggests that prices always equal fundamentals, i.e. you can't really beat the market, so join it, right? So that's kind of like his thing. And he's obviously a huge person at University of Chicago. And one of the things that I just always really respected about him is he was very fair and honest and lead by example. So he would show up at work every day, be before 6, as he was grinding at his office, even during holidays at like 6 a.m. doing research. And even though you might be some no-name PhD student, he's like high in the sky, famous dude. He was always open to talk about your research, help you out. And if he thought you were full of it, he'll just tell you, which I always appreciated. So he was kind of like a Marine Corps drill instructor in the sense that, he led by example, but he was also hard on you, but fair, right? And I think that helps people grow to kind of sometimes just get a transparent assessment of reality, because then it forces you to sometimes recognize your weakness. And so I thought he's great, man. I think it's awesome that he earned the Nobel Prize and serves as a great example of just how you can achieve a lot by just straight up hard work. Yeah. Obviously, you got to have some IQ points too, but I think for him, it is definitely the ability to just grind it out and make it happen.
No, I think people like that who have found what they are born to do. To just be able to wake up at 6 and be in the office because they love it, they're good at it, and that they know that they can serve the people around them by doing that. It is really a really cool way to live your life and to have a career. I have just a couple more questions for you here before we let you go. What's your approach to time management?
So I am a efficiency Nazi. That's that I hate wasting
wasted time.
Yeah, because I run a business. I got 3 little kids, and it's just is what it is, right? So, and I also love to get sleep. I love the PT, and it just is what it is, right? So we operate our business out of my house. I built like an office in my house because I wanted to rip out the commute component, right? So there is no commute. The other thing I try to do is, in general, I try to schedule everything and make sure it's on a program up front, because if you don't do that, as everyone knows, if you don't have like a schedule or a plan, well, let's just do it randomly. Well, something that was 15 minutes ends up being 5 hours.
Yep.
And then now you didn't PT, or now you didn't hang out with your kids, or whatever it is. So for me, it's just all about like scheduling everything to include the things people don't schedule, like schedule PT, schedule like go throw the baseball with Alice. I just schedule everything, which is kind of sick and pathetic. I know.
Not somebody who colors outside the lines a whole lot, huh? You have your schedule and you stick right to it.
I sometimes do, but yeah, for the most part, if I don't have it scheduled, it's a way to discipline myself to make sure I do it. So that's what works for me. Is just, I got to schedule everything and make sure it's in that calendar, and just try to cut out things that don't add value, like commute time.
Yeah, let me ask you this though. I think in time management, especially for executives who are high performing and they want to maximize their time, so they try to schedule it. But one thing that I think has become critically important for high performing individuals, or individuals who are just getting into their profession and are trying to figure out the time management component, one of those key components is rest. And one of
Yeah.
those key components is making sure that you are taking care of your mental health, your emotional health, especially within the veterans community. Is there
Yeah.
approach that you have that you allow yourself rest time, or are the things that you do that you would maybe recommend to somebody who is just getting out of the military to help them have either a restful period, a time to relax, and so that they can actually focus on the long term, that it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be all done at once?
So, yeah, 100%. So there's a gentleman named Matt Walker who studies sleep, and I recommend everyone read that book. It's called Why We Sleep. But the military has got a lot of great lessons, right? But sometimes it's, you want to work smarter, not harder. And so I am a huge proponent of getting appropriate sleep, right? So at least 8 hours a day for 90% of the population. And it's just make it habitual. Find a way to make that happen. Because if you don't recover, if you don't have appropriate sleep, especially in high functioning jobs where you got to actually think a lot, you're worthless. I would much rather have someone that's working for me sleep 10 hours if that's required to get 1 hour of good work, as opposed to them like doing all nighters and being stupid, because in the long run, you're just going to ruin people. Right. So I'm a huge fan of sleep, because I think it's critical to basically your long-term health and like your ability to like manage cortisol. I'm also a huge fan of like diet and like nutrition. And I always think that people should treat their body like a machine. Like you want the jet to go fast? Well, don't feed it freaking donuts.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna do shit, right? Fuel the machine appropriately. So pay a lot of attention to your nutrition. And then obviously the other component is obviously PT, so physical fitness is critical, just because it helps you like manage your cortisol, helps you take your mind off of like the world. And yeah, you can go do burpees like me and go do yoga. I don't really care. It's just, sleep, nutrition, and physical fitness, I think are above priority of everything. Otherwise you're going to be essentially like a low performance individual. It just ain't going to work. And obviously, as you know, like the service promotes never sleep, wake up at 2 a.m., go to bed at 1 a.m. And all that does is burn people to the ground and make them ineffective. And if we want to win the war, well, you need high performance individuals that kick ass and take names, which means they need to sleep, they need a PT, and they need to eat right.
Yeah,
Period.
no,
that's
yeah. It's kind of funny that saying, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But I think the older you get, the more you realize that rest is a key component of high performance. And I
Yes.
always try to encourage veterans who are coming out who want to go conquer the world. Like you said, hey, follow what Wes is saying here, man. Schedule out
Yeah.
your day, find the time to schedule in there your sleep time, your health time. That way, like as you said, you can keep the machine going.
Yeah.
Before we finish up here, is there anything else that we didn't get to touch on today that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Not much. I'd say like the key thing is like to your point there, take care of your mental health, take care of the machine, especially for veterans. That's critical because this is a long game. And the other thing is never expect anything, because just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you're owed shit. It means you have a toolkit and capacity to whoop it on beyond other people out there, right? So you want to make sure when you go out to the marketplace, you're not looking to get served, you're looking to serve, and you leverage the skill sets you've learned to add more value than other people out there, but you're still going to have to grind it out. And then the third thing is, I haven't exactly made it, but, I've been around a while, and we're very, very supportive of, veterans and trying to help them out. So I always encourage people to like reach out direct. We help out anyone, especially obviously a veteran. Show up to March for the Fallen, because you can network with a lot of like leaders in the community, and just always know that we individually, me and my team, who half of which are veterans, we're here to serve and help people out who are in that position of just exiting the service and trying to get into our game of finance, which is kind of nepotistic and tough to break into a lot of times. So more than happy to try our best to guide you in that adventure if you choose to take it.
Absolutely, Wes. Well, thank you for being on the program with us today. Thank you for sharing a really incredible story with our audience.
Yeah, you got it, man. Semper Fidelis, and good luck to everyone out there.
Semper Fi, Wes. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and our staff here at the Texas Veterans Land Board, thank you for watching Next Gen Warrior. We'll see you next Monday.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.